So let's
Yes,
come
please.
back now
Yes,
to this
please.
INEC education
Yes,
and
please.
things. So we're seeing it at the polling units, but I personally feel that we're missing it very early on. So you
Okay.
talked about the fact that you can set up a situation where once as a Nigerian you turn 18, you go on INEC's website, maybe you click a button, and all of a sudden you have either podcast or very short snippets that give you your responsibilities.
Yes, it does. Yes.
And I know the very famous quote we all hear is, don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. But when you reverse that or you look at that in the Nigerian context, we have generations who have grown up without understanding what their own civic responsibility to Nigeria as a citizen is. And that's where that lack is. I don't like talking about the National Orientation Agency because I feel like that agency right there has very much failed in what, even just the name, National Orientation Agency. You're supposed to be orientating Nigerians on certain issues. We rarely feel their impact. We didn't feel it during COVID. We're not feeling it with elections. So if we're going to do all of this, where do we reset?
And
because while we're
billions
fixing,
allocated to them
they
every
have
year.
a DG, they have staff.
Okay, let me tell you this. If you read the Constitution from the first chapter, section 123, it exposes you to expectations of government to you. If you come to sections 13, 14, 15, 16, it talks about the expectations and responsibilities of government with regard to economy, with politics, with education. It sets it out.
Yeah.
One of the things that has dig the feet of this administration under is nepotism. The president is supposed, according to what this constitution spells out, the president is supposed to have a balance in his administration regarding the people who occupy offices.
Federal character checks that.
Well, federal character is just a name. It is not what they believe should happen. For instance, Section 10.
Yeah, but the ministers.
Most definitely. Section 10, for instance, of this constitution says no government, federal or state, shall have a state religion. Sharia is a state religion. Section 10 says you shouldn't. So when you have the document say one thing, and the action is on the other side, then you have made a mess of, and that is why many people say this constitution must be burnt, because it's not respected, because the people didn't put it together. Having said that, therefore, from the grapevine, listen very carefully. After the 2015 election, or the 2019 election, 2015 comes to 2019, they were trying to look for who will head the National Orientation Agency. A particular young man known as Professor Mustapha Nwokobia, his name was penned. The name of Dr. Garba Abari, the one who is there now, was penned. We did a comparison of the capacities in terms of reading, writing, in terms of the effervescence of their engagements. We couldn't find much on Dr. Garba Abari. We found more than enough from Professor Mustapha Nwokobia. But this administration decided to go for Dr. Garba Abari. Why? While the lists were being processed, somebody said, do you want to give this particular agency to Mustapha Nwokobia, an orientation agency that has offices in 36 states of the Federation? And people felt, no, we won't give it to a competent person. And they listed Dr. Garba Abari.
We may not know what his competencies are.
Excuse me. Permit me.
Shade.
No, don't be smart by quarter.
No.
This is what I'm saying. Excuse me.
But it's your opinion.
Exactly.
It's not my opinion. It is a fact. I'm sharing a privileged information with you people here.
Okay. We'll come back to this because I think that it's a very necessary point. But
Yes,
Niyi is standing by in Ilegbo, and that is where the Labour Party candidates will be voting. So let's speak to Niyi Omoniyi now and find out how things are going there. Hello, Niyi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very clearly. So give us an idea of the situation of things where you are right now.
Okay, so this is Ilobu town. Just telling you that this is Ward 5, Unit 4. This is where the Labour Party candidates are expected to vote on the later part of today. So far, accreditation has been ongoing, although when we first started, there were some issues about the positioning of the voting cubicle. It was placed here at the beginning, but the party agents and the electorate said it's too open, and they needed to place it and just replace at that place after a lot of rancor. But accreditation has started, no issue so far. Although what I have noticed from this particular polling unit is that most of the electorate are showing people who they voted for. At least 2, 3 that have voted right now are stylishly, when they just vote, they kind of flip it to the audience, and that has been going on for a while. We've been trying to monitor those electors to see if they will walk up to some people, or some people will walk up to them at some point to establish if there's anything like vote buying, or maybe I see you've seen it and I can buy. But we've not been able to get that information. But certainly we are on top of the issue. We've also been to several polling units earlier. Accreditation has started and voting also has commenced.
Thank you, Nee. You were in Ekiti State just a few weeks ago. Would you say there's any noticeable difference in the conduct? I know it's still early in the day from the conduct in Ekiti and what you're witnessing in Osun State.
I'll take it in terms of 3 aspects. I'll take it in terms of the electorate, I'll take it in terms of INEC, then I'll take it in terms of security operatives. So the security operatives, as compared to APC, are much more people. They are not here, but the presence not heavy in polling units or major polling units as in APC. They're around, but I just feel maybe they've covered ground and the flat points have been taken care of. So that's for the security operatives. But we can still see them around. In fact, if you move to the right-hand side here, you will see police officers seated right here, and they are active and ready just to monitor any sort of flat point. For the electorate here, on my left-hand side, under the canopy, ready to vote, they've been here even before the INEC officials arrived, and they've been wanting to exercise their franchise. On the aspect of INEC, on most of the polling units we visited, from 7:25 till now, INEC officials have been getting there and setting up even before the electorate arrives. So generally, I would say the law has improved as against APC, but the issue of vote buying might still be some of the things that might still come up maybe the later part of the day that we might get evidence to.
All right, Snee, thank you so much. We will check back with you, and hopefully the connection will be a bit better there. So talking about some instances where voters are showing the crowd or showing some people in the crowd how they voted. Also, security is on ground, given that it is the polling units for the Labour Party candidate. That is a bit to be expected, but things seem to be gathering pace. So, Adeni, let's come back to the conversation where we were looking at the responsibilities, civic responsibilities, and of course, the National Orientation Agency and INEC as well in terms of educating the electorate. Because I don't want us to stick on the DG himself or even this president. This is an issue that predates the two of them. It predates whoever is in that office.
And it will leave after that.
And the expectation is that they should do better while they're there.
Okay, let me say this. Dr. Mike Omeri was the predecessor of Dr. Garba Abari. He was as inactive as Dr. Garba Abari until the elections came on board and he started pulling certain weights and he left without impact. Dr. Garba Abari, who is the substantive leader of the National Orientation Agency, has his competences. But we know that even in our classrooms as undergraduates, we knew the lecturers who knew how to deliver knowledge, and we also know lecturers that didn't know how to translate their own knowledge to other people. Dr. Garba Abari has his competences, but when you talk about media strategy and management, which actually is the platform he needs, he doesn't have such competences. And this is not being said to disrespect his capacities, but we have a problem. Nobody messes with proper diagnosis of a patient in the name of wanting to be emotional. You have to say it as it is. We have a problem. We're trying to do a diagnosis of the problem of the country. So I shouldn't be expected to not say it as it is, because we can't have solution if we don't say it as it is. His competences actually are not in the area of being able to engage with the Nigerian media, form collaboration, show a blueprint that will allow everybody to become interested in participating in enlightening people. And at the same time, it is only what you have that you can give. With every sense of humility to both of you, I knew very well, if I'm just imagining, the thousands of people that wanted this job before they eventually settled for both of you. It's about the capacities both of you have shown. So I'm saying here that people don't show capacities and they want to lay claim to certain reasons. Let's leave sentiment aside. Dr. Garba Abari doesn't have the capacity to manage the deluge of information and the complexities of such that Nigerians need. Nigerians are a people of 1,001 emotions, 1,001 perspective, and they are a people that at times go overtly religious, at times they want to be atheist. So this complexity of the psyche of the Nigerian needs somebody that is not only educated, that has multi-layered capacity to engage.
Now let's look at our present-day realities,
Yes,
and
please.
I also want to take to know Tolu's views on this.
Yes, please.
When we're growing up in the 80s, we didn't have a proliferation of TV stations, and when in the digital age, social media wasn't there. So everybody listened to that 9 p.m. NTA news. You could capture the imagination of a whole nation. You had them at attention. But now there's so much, there's options. So do you think we're being fair on the National Orientation Agency? Maybe their messages just get drowned in all of this cacophony of noise.
It is because the science of contemporary leadership requires that you expand your value. And your value, when expanded, accommodates new realities that surrounds you. And this becomes your knowledge level that allows you to engage further. Nigeria has evolved due to many countries of the world. The way children were raised differ from how children are being raised now. I could walk from Estate Baptist Primary School to Ojuelegba, where my father's house was, and I attended public secondary and primary schools. I could also walk, of course, with my friends from Ojuelegba to Government College, Surulere, and my mother or father won't bat an eyelid that I wouldn't return. They understood then that the security situation allowed for that. But hardly any parents, especially the over-pampered children of now, will be allowed to take such walks. And in doing that, I got acquainted to the nooks and crannies of my environment while growing up and attending school in Surulere. The same thing is not seen now. The people raising kids now, although many have over-pampered them that their kids don't even know how to walk on the roads, is that they've come to terms with the fact that the security situation now doesn't allow you to expose your children that way. A parent who doesn't understand that will leave the children to just do things without actually checking or monitoring to see that they are safe. This government is refusing to not want to move from where we were to where we are now. And that is why people will prefer other platforms for media information than government platform. Why? Because government has refused to accommodate the new realities of the media and has therefore has a reduced appeal or patronage from the people. And the people that work in government must not also be people whose horizon appears to be limited because they're going to remain at the level that doesn't help their master. Let me tell you, anybody appointed to work with any government has been brought in because the person is believed to have better understanding of how that government can function better. And that is why you shouldn't, in any office, employ people that won't be able to say, sir, we can do it better this way, ma, we can do it better this way. If everybody you employ just says, okay, we have heard, and doesn't tell you, I think that this is how it's being done now, we can actually have a balance between how it was being done and how it is being done now so that we can get the better, then it's going to be a problem. And that is the challenge of the National Orientation Agency.
So I think I would have to agree with him on this, because also that cacophony of noise also has allowed the National Orientation Agency to have more options of delivering the message.
That's true. That is very true. And at the same time, when you are, and let me tell you this, you see, government must understand that one of the things that work for it is that it is a government. And government must be able to stay humble enough in seeking very strategic collaborations with all other platforms. And government must also understand that because these other platforms pay taxes, you can't expect to have it for free.
True.
You could speak with the leadership and tell them.
And they could take it as a form of public
corporate
service.
social.
As a matter of fact, some of them would be willing. You see, these things are strategic. If, for instance, the taxes paid to government is actually 10% on income, government thinking out of the box will say, okay, we're going to take 2% off your tax payment because we believe that we are partners in progress for the development of this country. Pay 8%. If you paid, for instance, 2 billion last time. You can pay 1.8 billion now. The 200 million, let it be for our media collaboration. Help us disseminate this information. You can create content, maybe 10 different content, men, female, children, 5 minutes. Just, you can actually find a balance of the calculation. Do it for us. And the media will use their ideas that are very attractive. So the content doesn't have to come from them. You just give them specification for the content and they help you. But you can't do this if you're not thinking out of the box.
So I will shamelessly plug, News Central on this right now, because this is something we've taken quite personally. Given the fact that Lagos and Nigeria is our base, we've been actually putting together PVC messages from celebrities that have come into the station.
That makes a lot of sense.
We're asking them to
Talk
do
to
this
professors.
message.
Tell
young Nigerians to please go and register for your PVC. Ensure that you come out and vote. I know we'll see 1 or 2 of those in the course of this very soon. So when we can get that up, we'll play it. We've had people like Derele. We've had a Nollywood actor as well. There's going to be more because we feel it's our corporate social responsibility.
But I also want to say this.
Yes.
I'd like you to see how you can also engage them in indigenous languages. You can do the subtitles in English on the screen. Go to the market, go to the river, go to universities for professors. Entertainers have their own segment of the population that they influence. But the people in the academia, the people, you know, that are engineers, every society we have different segments, have different structures, even if it's 1 or 2 from each. Very short, because if you don't think out of the box, you cannot really solve problems. Nigeria is complex. It's a complex country that needs those that are not thinking like every other person to resolve the problem.
Talking about problems, what are the biggest issues and what are the problems that needs to be solved in Osun State? Because I mean, if before Osun State wasn't created in the 1980s, but if you look at Nigeria, for example, if somebody passed just before the Shagari elections and you by chance woke up in 2022. It's the same electoral issue. So this is 40 years plus. We're still talking on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, food, basics, shelter, clothing.
Yes, please.
Is it that we're not progressing as a society, and what needs to be done? I was in Osun State 4 years ago to cover, I was on the ground to cover the elections, and it doesn't seem much has changed.
Yeah, much hasn't changed because many people do not want power to really change the agenda with regard to the terms of reference of the leaders to those that actually are being led. As an undergraduate, I took up positions as, you know, across this country, National Vice President, Students of English and Literature in Nigeria. As a core member, I was a president of my core, the place I served. And for every position I occupied, even after I left the educational system, and I now started working, I've actually been at management levels in organizations. One thing that I've found is on a scale of 10 to 20, you will find detractors 19 times, especially if your ideas are innovative, because you want to actually plug holes that they actually don't want. Let me go to a policy of
disrupt. Yes.
Let me go to Petroleum Industry Act and subsidy. It took us approximately, if I were to add other years, 20 years to get the PIB to become PIA. And having done that, what now happened? We have it passed. Few months after it was passed, the same administration tells you they cannot implement it now. Why? Because the subsidy payment actually happens to be going into certain pockets and people are benefiting from it, and they believe that if the PIA is operated as it should, it will prevent most definitely a lot that goes into subsidy. And if it does, many people that are benefiting and fleecing this country will not have it done. So if you look at it, the country has essentially not changed. Osun State has essentially not changed because the status quo is about a few wanting to hold people down and weaponizing poverty. Then at the same time, destroying education that should have actually made them realize their dignity as human beings and refusing the so-called election largesse that comes to them. So having weaponized poverty, they destroyed education. They help you to not realize that you need to develop capacity to think. and in realizing your dignity, you're able to do that. Then the responsibility of government, let me tell you this, in the Constitution, read sections 14 to 20, you would find out that in one of that portion it says government shall, and when it's able, provide primary education free, university education free. University education free. This constitution has it. This amended constitution has it. But it is sad that the things government is supposed to do to bring the citizens to a level of being able to say, you can't pay people in elections, they've not been able to make them think that way.
Okay, so let's go back. We'll come back to this again.
It's okay.
Let's go back to the live feeds that we have on our screens. They're coming in from Iragbaji, where the governor, Oyetola, will be voting, as well as
Yusuf Lasso in Ilogbo, the candidate of the Labour Party. And
what we're seeing is that things, as we said earlier, have gotten a bit crowded there. And I know earlier you would have seen maybe, I think it was an ad hoc staff, NYSC member and NSCDC official trying to move people back and trying to set up the actual place where voters will vote. We're seeing the crowds come out. So we do expect to see both of those candidates probably in the next hour or so come out as well. They will address the crowds and we'll cover that for you live. But also that's that. We know there are about some 3,763 polling units. Right now, the police say they've deployed around 21,000 police officers with an additional 11,226 NSCDC officials. That's probably not also accounting for undercover DSS that's present, as well as some of the military there. So we're looking at over 32,000 security officials for an election that has 1.5 million registered voters. At the end, we might be able to skirt and get 1 million people out. I'm not very sure we're going to go past. I'm hopeful. I don't think we'll pass the 1 million. And it's necessary. It would be nice to see an election with those kind of registered voters numbers, but then see it past 1 million. We've been seeing so many state elections that fall below that, and it speaks to a lot of apathy in the system. So we're talking about the issues, and Benga has mentioned that, and we're getting to that. You widened it, and I want us to drill down. There are 15 political parties.
Yes,
when we keep talking about the cacophony of noise that happens, 15 political parties. How are 15 political parties going to bring out 15 different agendas, 15 different roadmaps that the people will be able to follow and to address? The debate was held. You've scored Lasso Yusuf as the highest performer of the debate, but we know that debates do not carry as much weight as many of us would like them to, because that's the one time you are very much able to hold, number one, get candidates on record for what they plan to do and how they plan to address things, and also ask them direct questions. So for Osun voters and electorate today, coming back to what Benga asked, what are the issues? If not much has changed since the state was created and not much has changed since you covered the elections 4 years ago, what are they voting for?
Well, I think that you should know that the first foot soldiers that an incumbent has would be the workers in the state. Because if the policies of the people that are working directly in the administration of that government do not buy your ideas, then definitely there's going to be a hard sell for others. But at the same time, you must understand that the people that are working with the government of Osun are only minimal compared to other voting adults. But that is also a sizable number, because this is it. If there's disenchantment with regard to the people that are out there not working with government,
they can feel the pulse.
It spreads.
Yes, to a great extent, the government can feel a little bit secure that the people that are working in government know that their interests perhaps are protected and they should vote for me. If, for instance, Oyetola has made sure he doesn't owe salaries since he got to office, although he has not paid backlog, they could feel like, well, it's not bad. It's not compared to his predecessor. But at the same time, people will understand better now. Now, between 2019 and now, about 22 investors have come into Osun. Not up to 10 have been able to move from visit, intention, feasibility study to actually participating in the segment of that Osun economy that have created more jobs. It therefore means that if you look at 22 and less than 10 have actually started doing operation in that state, then there's something about the government that may not be favorable to those that have showed intent in wanting to do that. The private sector is a critical sector in ensuring that, you know, employment actually is put forth, and the budget of every state is usually a policy document that also enables government to do what it has to do. We're talking Osun. As a point of extension, Nigeria, Emefiele's in Buhari's administration has had one of the most inconsistent financial policies. At some point, at the moment now, people who bring in dollars find it difficult to take it out.
To repatriate, yeah.
Now, the central bank is coming with some opportunities for you to actually buy certain things from the central, your import or export from the central bank, where you get at least maybe about 50-something naira or 60-something naira on every dollar, so that at least you can keep your monies in. Now, what kind of policy would allow people bring in about $200 million, and if they make a gain of $300 million, you use your policy for them to keep this money here? Don't forget that most of them take loans from their countries to come do businesses here. That makes it not attractive. I said it here before. The first quarter of this country, only about 5 states attracted investment. Or close to 30 didn't attract any foreign direct investment. Now, coming back to Osun State, the reality about people going for an election will be about the hope that anybody holds aloft. One of the accusations that have been put against Oyetola is that he's stingy. And that stingy has been said by his own party members, but not alone, even by security operatives.
Exactly, explain. Stingy how?
Stingy in the two parts now. Some people that have said he's stingy have said, especially his party faithful, that we worked hard for him, and we're supposed to have functional state secretariats and wards and all that.
But is that not a problem of the system that has spoilt them to expect some kind of largesse?
It's a balance.
Or showing of love.
It is a balance. It's a balance of where the resources go. That's one part. And even if we don't want to look at the political party, because the political parties is super intense, you look at security operatives. Now, one of the things we found out is when you have like an Ekiti, give the State Commissioner of Police about 12 million naira a month. You go to like an Ondo, about 13, 14 million naira a month. You have an Oyetola who gives less than 5 million a month for security, yet there is security votes not accounted for. You begin to ask question, why not give enough for states that is bigger, population that is more, to really deal with security issues? Don't forget that all of these things are weighed. I don't want to use the word mene tekel parsil. He has been put in the weight and found wanting in certain regard. But at the same time, has he done well? Because number one, we cannot all see negatives. If people work with the state government and their salaries are paid as and when due, I think that is number one responsibility. But beyond that, what about the people
why
of
are we
Osun?
even talking about this in
So
2022
this is
as a
salary
dividend?
should be-
It is not a dividend of democracy. It is the responsibility.
And it should not be something that a governor is scored on when we're looking
Exactly.
at
Okay,
the
I won't
next
say-
as part of
tenure.
his scorecard.
But comparatively, he has shown that he's responsible.
Are
he
we
has
not
shown-
setting the bar very
Solo,
low?
underground.
Okay, fine. Let's take it away. I said that he's been able to attract about 22 prospective investors, although less than 10 have been on the ground running. But at the same time, there is this investment summit that Osho usually holds. When he came to office, he has done that. But, you know, there is this thing that connects you to your people, that make your people believe that you really are for them. I mentioned the Ragbiji earlier. For the majority of the people of Osun, they've come to terms with the fact that it seems as if this man here, whose uncle brought to power, appears to want to be handling this place as some people believe Lagos is being maneuvered by Bola Tinubu and many of his ilks. And that is a fact. Even if, as you know, media professionals, you guys want to stay in the middle of this conversation, permit me stay at the core of the conversation where things are happening. I hold the tentacles here. Many people are disaffectionate towards him because they said, for instance, your elder sister happens to be, the elder sister of Bola Tinubu happens to be your mother. In the first place, as the former chief of staff to the government, you should not have been expected to take over. But the Aregbesola combo, who also had been, you know, has served in the government in Lagos State before benevolence took him to Osun State, and he was a two-term governor. So we have the Lagos, Bola Tinubu, Iraq-Biji connection, also wanting to bear rule in Osun State. And people are saying, no. We can't have such dynastic controllers. So disaffection is coming. Then the fallout between himself and Aregbesola has also stirred up certain honestness, such that people are beginning to see that it seems as if they want to make this like now belonging to a family or a local government rather than the people of Osun State. But if we move away from that, we also have to start looking at the alternatives that these people have.
Okay, before we get to the alternatives, let's quick, because it's necessary we also don't get bogged down like we sometimes tend to accuse others of just focusing on the two major parties.
No, we have others.
Yes, there are others as well.
Yes.
But before we get to that, there's also something I don't know if you as a viewer have noticed about those who we see at the polling units. We did emphasize that that INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission in Nigeria, has said the elderly, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and those with disabilities will be given preference. If you look at a lot of the visuals, it seems that young Osun voters are missing.
Maybe.
Is it too early for them?
Maybe.
Well, I think that they should have been the one who comes there earliest. And
yeah, but priority voted goes
they are the ones
yeah.
who should, you know, the excitement. For instance, in the Ekiti election, we saw lots of young people. The optics are different here. I wouldn't know how much that is. But don't forget, the person who leads Ekiti, I'm sorry to say, but I have to say it, owns a PhD and has been in their eyes and faces before long. He was a minister, had been a governor before. His level of engagement is different. I talked about Oyetola being reticent. See, leadership must take into account the charismatic impact somebody has on the people that are there. And that is why, you know, Tolokbe talked about what is the importance of debate. Let me tell you, when there's a disconnection within the education sector, people don't find intelligent conversations important as part of how and why they must call the people that should represent them. Political rendition must take into cognizance the importance of debates going into elections, because let me tell you, nobody takes power in silence. Power is loud. And because power is loud, you have to be able to convince people. No woman has been won over by keeping quiet. No matter how nice a man is, you have to say something to her. No man has ever had love spelled out properly if he doesn't also hear something good from the woman that he cares about.
On that note, I'm going to pause. I have my comments, but Adeni, just hold on to that. As he said, power is loud, but so also is criticism and sometimes disaffection and disengagement from the political process as well. So we want you to listen to this and we'll come back to the conversation.
Bọ́ọ̀dì báyìí wọ́n gbé káàdì tí wọ́n bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí vote báyìí wọ́n bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí vote tí wọ́n bá gbọ́ sókè báyìí wọ́n máa mọ vote wọ́n máa mọ pàṣẹ ẹ̀dì wọ́n bá gbọ́ ìsàlẹ̀ wọ́n mọ pàṣẹ ẹ̀dì so wọ́n secret vote is láàrin ní Nàìjíríà kì í ṣe open vote tó ikú dákú máa gbé gbọ́ sókè báyìí wọ́n bá party by the vote bá gbọ́ síbẹ̀ wọ́n fi party by the vote àti kí ni ẹ̀ báyìí ní sí iye bẹ́ẹ̀ la fẹ́ fàìtì gègé pé kí wọ́n gbé sára gírí mo kọ́ ọ̀pọ̀ nígbà sára gírí láti pé anybody ò ní mọ ẹtẹ́ni political vote so ìyẹn máa go by the constitution of Nigeria so returning officer yìí sì sọ pé bẹ́ẹ̀ sọ fáwọn ọ̀nà mo sọ pé kó show electoral act ó ní kó show electoral act to back up ní system ni so kò lè show electoral act so ló wà mí as the country.
So apparently a voter there speaking about the process of how the voting will happen, that given the fact that Nigeria uses secret balloting or secret voting, but the way things have been set up is allowing for people to possibly show their vote. And he said that he challenged the INEC staff that is there to show him in Nigeria's Electoral Act where the sort of setup that's being set up right there is allowed in the Constitution. And so, you know, when you see something like that, and you see she's on the phone, apparently she's probably maybe talking to somebody that this particular crowd is refusing to do as we've been instructed. But what do you take away from that?
I'm very happy that somebody who is speaking in one of Nigeria's indigenous languages has an understanding of what the rule book says and is standing his ground that there has to be compliance with the dictates of the rule books. That is my joy to begin with. Regardless of the language where which he communicated, I'm happy that he's aware. If we can have other people stand by him and the numbers are large in creating a dissent towards what is lawless, then we can have sanity at that poll. And many other persons at the different polling units, over 3,700, if they could also not do the bidding of the INEC staff that perhaps has certain communication from those who are beneficiaries there. And I think it's going to be good. I'm happy that your channel has exposed this. And the person sent to that particular location will be called to order. or the person will actually be marked as somebody.
There's a spotlight.
I am very, very happy that that is happening, because ordinarily as an INEC staff or an ad hoc staff, you've been given the proper orientation before you go there. You cannot set up where people are to vote in such a way that when you vote, they will see who you vote for. That is not what it should be. And this young man...
It defeats the purpose of a secret
ballot. It defeats it completely.
So,
yes, please.
So I want us... Yes, but I also want us to quickly put that back on the screen, because when we say it's a secret ballot, look at where it is set up. That is more an open secret voting than anything.
Quite frankly, it's supposed to be at a distance from them. You're supposed to take it. You take a walk away from where you got accredited and go do your business there. So, and I think that this is what we also are calling attention to. You see, these are the kind of things that actually abuse the process that is supposed to be proper.
Let's go back to Nii right now. He's in Oshogbo. Nii Omoni is there. There seems to be some kind of, not commotion, but conversation. So let's hear from Nii now. Nii, can you tell us what's going on?
I noticed something here earlier, and I've tried to raise the attention of the police and some staff as well as it. There's a man in red here, and one other person earlier. They are supposedly assisting the agent to cast their vote. But the challenge is they are also party agents, and there's call for, is this transparent enough? Can't an INEC staff get to do that, or an other staff from INEC get to do that? But so far, nothing has been done about it. I'm just really worried about that, and that's the concern I feel that should be raised in this particular polling unit. This is Ward 5, polling unit 4 in Osun. Yeah, this is Ward specifically.
So he seemed to be telling you something just before we came to you. What was he saying?
Yes. So he was explaining that one of the person is his mother, and he was also explaining that some of them know him, so they contacted him to come and help them while he was here.
All right, so and he's wearing a tag which identifies him as a party agent?
Yes, as a party agent.
And so, as you said, just to make sure the audience is clear, you've reported this, you've pointed this out, but right now, as of now, nothing has been done.
Yes. I've spoken with him, as you saw me.
All right, Nii, thank you so much. We'll come back to you. So you see, when you take those two instances, situations back to back, you see a difference. He says, or the gentleman in question says, that he was contacted by some of the people to come and help them vote, which we know is actually not allowed.
In fact, the person who should prevent him has to be the INEC officers who are there. If anybody happens to have contacted you, then you should not even have any tag on you that shows that you belong to a party. It has to be a neutral person.
Because if you're going to help someone vote, you obviously help the person vote for
your
party.
direction.
Yes, and that is what is going to happen. And I think that it compromises the integrity of the process itself. And this is why, the business of election, as I have been mentioning, and this is the obtained time, must be taken as life and life, not life and death. Because whatever happens here will translate to the biggest stage. Yeah. And whatever translates to the biggest stage that did not come through the proper process will definitely have its negative consequences. The person who is there, and I'm happy that the media actually has brought this out, the INEC person should be the one that everybody is speaking against, that you cannot allow this happen. Nobody that is a party agent should assist anybody. And I'm even happy that the person did not come there as a neutral person. It therefore means that the person should be told, stay away. Anybody who has voted is even better in assisting another person who needs some help than somebody who is an obvious and officially recognized interested agent. And I think these are the things that INEC should also, take into cognizance going into other elections, so that we can have this. After this election, we are going straight to the major elections, basically. And anything that happens here are the things that, if not checked, will translate to the biggest circle.
Litmus test for
2022. So this is a litmus test. And I hope sincerely that we don't have this kind of things continue. I'm praying that when you guys get back to Nii Omoni, he can tell you very well that they've told that young man to move away from there, because that is what it should be. See, the sanity of this country can be helped, faster. First, you people are doing your work. He is doing his own. Why then is it that government agency that should be leading the way happens to be the one that is actually going off the track? And that is where leadership has to be gotten right, so that we don't continue to go in circles.
No, talking about leadership, we did to a certain extent X-ray Mr. Gbega Oyetola's last 4 years in
Yes,
office.
please.
What about the other candidates?
Well,
let's talk about PDP.
Okay.
Senator Ademola Jackson
Yeah.
Adeleke,
Yeah.
the man that likes to
Are you the one who
dance.
gave him the Jackson middle name?
Well,
It's actually his name.
yeah. Okay, in the first place, I have respect for him as a father, as a husband, as a family member to people. I'm coming from an illustrious family that has done a lot for the people of his state. And don't forget that gave him the leverage. His brother passed away. He occupied the brother's office and he emerged as a political giant. But we know that he was never part of the political process with regard to having understanding of what the party is all about and what politicking is all about. Now, he and his brothers were taken away from this country by their father, who happens to be one of the earliest people that met with the Europeans during the colonial days. Their father was a political colossus in this country and from Oyo, because this
Old
state,
Oyo,
Old
yeah.
Oyo, this
Yeah.
state was created out of Oyo 1991, and that I think is in August 27, 1991. Having said that, when you come into a space that you're not acquainted with before, nothing knocks you off than learning the more. In the first place, he never had O levels. That became an outcry. He left, and between then and now, I'm aware that he has actually gone for some courses, which means that okay, he has seen the need to get educated.
Self-improvement. Yeah.
But at the same time, it needs to be reacculturated, because to me, he appears to me like a spoilt young man.
That's going very far.
No, it seems to me like a spoilt young man.
Appears to you.
And I've used the synonym to make it a safe expression.
Want to be clear.
It's not a metaphor. It's a simile. The things he exudes, the things he communicates by his actions, the things he said. For instance, at the debate, at times when they ask him questions, he will tell Sean, my guy, let me tell you this. No, he said that. It's on record. So I'm taking the material.
Yeah.
I'm taking the material from his action to say it seems to be like a spoilt person, not actually one, but the things I see as allowed for such comparison, because he gave me room by giving me material to do this analysis. When you aspire to such exalted office, your language must be reworked, and you must be willing to allow your language to be reworked. You do not insult people by your level of expression that actually limits the kind of ideal that people expect to see in that state.
Office, yeah.
And I think it is very key for politicking. At the debate also, many questions he was asked, he didn't quite answer them. He was just referring repeatedly to the malfeasance, as it were, of the incumbent governor and how they have to prevent loopholes, that lots of things have been messed up with. Giving us a blueprint or strategy of what you want to do, I didn't find. I'm not providing this. I'm using again the material from him. So I'm saying very carefully here that he perhaps is leveraging the Davido influence, the work of his father, the work of Davido's father, who is an educationist, and is actually leveraging the strength that surrounds him. But as an individual, I'm talking about the kind of people that are from Osun State. I am afraid for the corporate destiny of Osun if this man takes office, except, of course, he has decided to work with those who know better than him. We know that there are lots of inventors of yore, American inventors, the Thomas Edisons of this world, were not as educated as people expect them to be, but they surrounded themselves with people that had capacities. Bola Tinubu also doesn't quite understand what political leadership is, but he leveraged the expertise and capacities of people around him. Maybe that can work well for Adeleke if voted to office. You never can tell. Perhaps those things I referred to, is dancing, is display in public, are really part of the weight he had to shed. But maybe he understands certain things that I have not seen. But so far, if at all the PDP takes office, then I think that the PDP leadership must help him to understand the business of political leadership in that state and surround him with those that will not plunge the state further into problems.
So beyond the debate,
Yes, sir.
looking at its antecedents, you've not seen anything quite encouraging
Okay, this is
about his capacity to deliver.
Okay, as a lawmaker, for the brief period he had,
Osun West.
Osun West, before we had the O-level concern, he was dancing everywhere, actually. He was dancing everywhere. At every event they held, he'll hold his stomach, he'll be twisting. I think that those were the things he did when he occupied the office as a national lawmaker. He didn't quite even make a statement. At least we watched the debate on the floor. He didn't quite do much that we could refer to. I've been looking for videos. I've been looking for segments he made while he represented Osun West. If you found one you can share with me, I'm willing to learn. It's not available. So I would have made use of that as a measuring stick, or as a measuring yarn, for me to say that, okay, for the brief period, he made this, he did this, and all that. When Peperito, of blessed memory of the APC, got there, his period at the Senate was very brief. But I heard and have some videos of Peperito making statements, making comments. I'm talking about the representative of Lagos East, making comments at the floor, whose life was cut short by death, just that brief period when the COVID actually came on. But for him,
So why then is it seeking the highest office in the state?
Wait, is that the question, or why is PDP taking this chance again?
one of the things that perhaps they found, I said that it comes from an illustrious family. And over the years, the family has been doing a lot of charity work for the indigenous people of Osun State. So they want to leverage
on that.
that goodwill of the family to seek election. But at the same time, the PDP should know that between then and now, they would have taken him somewhere for a year or two, given him certain courses, taught him how to understand the
Sort
people.
of finishing school. Yeah.
It is not enough. We have many graduates that are leading the bandwagon of people that are destroying countries. Osama bin Laden was a pilot, properly educated.
From a very illustrious
From a
family.
very illustrious family in Saudi Arabia. He is the leader of the terrorists that are plunging the world into the problem now. So it is not always enough to get education. It is to allow that come into you and you go into it. It is when you have a proper exchange. When you learn or you mix with people or you allow yourself to be exposed, the acculturation process is not just something that you put in your head. It should go into you and out such that it's a mix of process. There has to be the synergy. There has to be the symbiosis of learning. And that is what we don't quite see in the person of Ademola Adeleke. And that is where I have my worry. But the PDP have decided, as a party to look at the followership. And of course, they're also looking at his nephew.
How much impact or how much influence do you think Davido's followership will really have for Senator Ademola Adeleke in this election?
In the first place, I remember there was a time Davido talked about, that should be early this year or last year.
Because there was another family member who was also striving for the position, so it now became a family issue.
I agree,
well.
but that has been laid to rest at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, don't forget that at some point, Davido said he wanted to buy, I think he wanted to buy a car or something that trended on social media, and people contributed to that.
On his birthday.
And eventually he gave the entire millions to charity.
Yes.
And I believe that when you are able to let people contribute to such causes that are noble, you have certain levels of influence over them. And I believe that the way people also came out at the rally of the PDP is also another marker to show that at least because of him, they wanted to have a nice time. But another thing that I'm worried about, how many of those people really have PVCs?
I'm so happy you brought
How many
that
of those
up.
people will be coming out to vote? Perhaps many of them came out and relieved themselves of stress. Let me look at that.
It's an opportunity to see Davido.
To see Davido. And let me look at all of that. Let me just participate in this and enjoy myself. If I thought they're going to throw some money up because he said he has brought the dollars and the pounds, maybe he's going to throw some in the air. And don't forget, the dollar now is about 650. The pound sterling is over 700. If you're lucky to pick 100, what I'm saying in essence is there are possibilities for why you have the numbers of people there.
But will those numbers translate?
That is also that's the question mark behind this statement now. That we can only wait to see how that translates to those that really will indeed vote for the PDP. But if we're to just look at that as a measuring stick, then I think that they're going to have more votes because you have more people at their rally. But at the same time, nothing is cast in stone. As you were saying earlier, we have other persons.
Before
Yes,
we go
please.
to other persons, let's just look at how many voters, once again, the 15 political parties are vying for. INEC released, of course, the information on that, but it's also interesting to note there are around 500,000 uncollected voters cards, PVCs. And I think it's really important we talk about that because that would have upped the number of registered voters in INEC to around just under 2 million that would have been actually being pursued. So in Osun State, the registered voters are actually 1.95 million. 1.479 million have collected their PVCs, a little under 500,000.
That's impressive.
Are yet to be collected as of just a few days ago. And so we see now that we have 1.5 who are eligible. So that's also a large number that could have swung the votes in somebody else's direction.
Okay, let me say...
I mean, 500,000 will win votes.
They'll win an election.
Yeah, but let me first of all make this clear. The Socio-Economic and Rights Accountability Project, they actually have lost a verdict to INEC over the continuous voter exercise. According to the courts, the statement was put out yesterday by INEC. They were supposed to round off every exercise regarding the continuous voter registration at the end of June. But whilst they were waiting for the verdict of the court, which is out already, they extended till the 15th. And INEC has made a statement that although the court has given them room to not extend as their decision, but they're going to add 15 days to it for the continuous voter exercise.
Fantastic.
So between now, if you did that, you should collect your PVC by October of this year. I thought that information is very necessary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, we have to quickly go to River State and the issue of the uncollected PVC. Video trended yesterday or day before yesterday, and they found out that very large number of PVC were actually, buried somewhere at the home of, according to what we have, a politician. But another thing is INEC will investigate that according to the statement put out by Mr. Festus Okoye.
Yes.
So we also await that. But we also must understand that we don't have a clear-cut statistics on the nature of people's means of employment and the convenience that will enable people to have access. For instance, as I'm here, my PVC happens to go almost everywhere with me. But the challenge is, it's defaced because of the quality of the PVC. So what did I do? I actually was assisted by an INEC officer to get the registration done for the recollection. But I have to go here from this place to Igboefon, for instance, to pick it up. Let's put in my shoes a 70-year-old woman, a breastfeeding mother, a woman who is 8 months pregnant, a man who uses crutches to move from here to Igboefon. The challenge along the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway is known to many people who live along that side. I think that the uncollected PVCs, moving away from what happened with regard to the buried PVC in River State, has to also do with the inefficiency, as it were, although not deliberate, of INEC. Oftentimes, the local governments are made use of for the collection of this. But I think that INEC can also use some other designated offices.
Or even dispatch.
Okay, do you know one thing about Nigeria?
People like me will pay dispatch or will pay to go to the nearest
and do you even know
to pick up.
Dispatch, if you told a Nigerian to pay 500 or 1,000, we have things that people dispatch, we pay 500 for it.
1.5 now in Lagos.
Okay,
or
I
even
agree.
2,000.
But INEC can actually also tell them, we're giving you volume. We're giving you volume. That is how you cut deals. We're giving you volume, make it 1,000 naira. Tell them to pay on INEC registration portal. Everybody gets your PVC at the address you give.
Or the closest NIPOST official office.
As a matter of fact, you are talking about NIPOST. NIPOST may also not have office. Let's say this. NIPOST has an office. I'm talking about the island now. NIPOST has an office at Obalinde. There's another office at Ikoyi roundabout.
There's one beside us here.
Beside us. So you find out that within this axis, they are closer than that local government that is far. That is the, I think that should be Etiosa, local council, they are farther off. So I think that INEC must also make it easy for people to really, we're talking about a state with 30 local government areas. It is important, therefore, that INEC has to review the centers it sends people to for the collection. And INEC should also understand, although INEC may be talking about, I don't want people to miss their PVCs, I don't want to get it missing. No. INEC can prevent that. The dispatch riders or the dispatch companies will sign. You take responsibility for this. UPS and all of that will make use of, all of the FedExes of this world, they know that
they deliver life-saving medicines.
And I'm telling you that
important secret documents.
And I'm telling you that I have sent things from here outside the country and from outside the country back home, and I didn't have to lose sleep because they know that immediately they collect my money. It's a contract that I can take them to court for. So I think that INEC should take certain responsibility and review its processes. Maybe this 500,000 would not even be uncollected if INEC had done that.
And I think we also need to add to that, INEC has talked about death register and updating as well. We don't know how many of this 500,000 have left the country or maybe unfortunately
how many
have
of them
away.
at the same time, let's say it as it is, how many of these people in question can INEC determine when we don't have the national census conducted? The parents that will help. And that's why I was talking about having something like a Statista update or a worldometer where every time a birth is registered, it is imputed into a system that takes it to the central government.
Yes. What are your thoughts, Adene? I do see operatives of the Economic Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in our picture, and we have Bernard Akede on standby to give us latest updates from this location in Ede. That's the hometown of the PDP candidate, Senator Ademola Adeleke. Hello, Bernard.
Yes, Benga, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you give us an update of what is happening around you? I did see one of the operational vehicles of EFCC in the shots. What is happening around you?
Exactly. We're in Ede North. Like you rightly mentioned, Ede is the hometown of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. I'm talking about none other than Senator Adeleke. He is from Ede, this particular local government. Now we are in Ward 4 here in Ede, where they have already started casting their votes, and the vehicle that you're seeing there just arrived. It's one of the patrol vans of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. They've been going around to ensure that financial crimes are not perpetrated during these elections, particularly votes buying. We tried to speak to one of them, but he said that he was not authorized to speak to the press. We're trying to find out if they had so far heard or seen any cases of votes buying while patrolling the area. But like I mentioned earlier, he said he was not in any position to speak to the press. Now, this particular ward has been, everything has gone on smoothly, but as at the time we arrived, some of the voters were a bit agitated. They complained that the election procedure in this particular ward was pretty slower than they expected it to be, and it made them a bit edgy, and they began to complain. We had to intervene to speak to the electoral officers and then to speak to some of the aggrieved voters as well as party observers. Basically just explaining to them that it's a process that takes time. I tried to find out if the delay had anything to do with the machines or with some of the equipment that they're using. Apparently not. It was just the people trying, being eager to cast their vote and to leave. But so far so good. Ede has been peaceful. We're still going around to other polling units and other wards in this particular local government to see how things are going on for ourselves. We also hope to catch on to Senator Adeleke himself at some point during the course of this election.
What would you say about voter turnout where you are, Bernard?
Well, I'm quite impressed, I must say, about voter turnout. Maybe again because this is an opposition local government, so they are throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, to ensure that they have as many votes as they possibly can that can contest with the ruling party. So voter turnout here in Ede so far, even in some of the most remote of areas in this local government that we have passed, you would see people turning out to vote. Again, you will see the elderly coming out, and they have been given preference, first of all, to cast their own votes. Also, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and people living with disabilities. So I must say I'm pretty impressed with the turnout that I have seen here as compared to what I saw in Ekiti about a month ago. It's quite impressive in Ede local government.
All right. Thank you so much, Bernard Akede. We will, of course, be checking back with you in the course of the day. So I want to go back to something that we've been talking about. We talked about the ballot system. And when you look at how elections are conducted abroad, you will enter not a full 360 booth, but what's the halfway, like 240 booth anyway.
A semicircle.
Yes, a semicircle. And then there's a curtain that closes you in. And then from there, whether it's electronic or it's paper, it goes directly into the ballot system. Yeah. Are we not at a point in time where we have recognized the pitfalls of this this secret ballot system we're using? Because it's not so secret. Issues of vote buying continue. Issues of people showing their vote to party agents or individuals continue.
If there was a curtain and a semicircle, it obviously will prevent that from happening.
Yes.
Most definitely it will. But a country that over 100 million still do not have email addresses, you have to consider the fact that it's a reflection of our level of development and the things we actually provide as infrastructure during elections. But you see, government can do the basics that are needful to prevent disharmony and discord that often typifies our electoral processes. In the first place, the people that are often used for elections are those that you read riot acts to. Integrity begins with them, and they should be those that can think out of the box to do what is right. When we went to Ilogbo, we saw what Nei showed us there. In the first place, you shouldn't expect that to be seen. And everybody who finds himself as an ad hoc staff working for INEC should know that you are representing the leadership of INEC, and anything you do will rub off on your leader. So what do? You ensure the highest level of sanity, of dignity, and transparency in that election. I was expecting them to have told those that have come to vote, keep at least some distance from there so that you don't crowd it. You have to organize people, and I think that is not rocket science to do. Anything that will...
But why does it seem like in Nigeria that you have to tell people the basic things to do? I mean, just looking at the war in Ukraine, for example, when people were leaving war-torn cities, nobody was taking a one-way route. In Japan, after the Fukushima nuclear incident, people were still orderly. This is a civic exercise. Why do we have to, enforce
We don't have order.
Yes. I apologize. I just feel like I keep interrupting today. But we're going back to the ward where Niyi Omoniyi is, and we see Yusuf Lasun. He is the Deputy Speaker of the 8th House of Representatives, led by former Speaker Yakubu Dogara, and he is the Labour Party candidate. That's his ward there in Ilogbo, Osun State. So he is about to vote, and we expect that he will also be addressing the media or addressing the crowd right after that. So let's go to those live images now.
While we wait audio from the live feed in Ilogbo, Adeniyi, I would like you to tell us, because we've interrogated the APC and PDP candidate. Yes, what do you have to say about the gentleman, Yusuf Lasun?
Well, Yusuf Lasun is amongst every other person, the one that has invested the most in the economy of Osun State. And
how is that?
Invested the most.
No, invested how? In what way?
In terms of private businesses. He's a farmer without a doubt, and he has invested a lot in the palm kernel business. Palm trees are there, and he had also talked about how government took over certain hectares of land from him because he wasn't in power. And don't forget that only this week an attempt was made on his life, and he actually brought that out. And that's not the only time. He said he had had such attempts made on his life a number of times, and it is simply because he has an understanding. As I said earlier,
he won the debates for you. Yes.
Yeah, he won the debate for me, and he definitely won the debate for many others who really understand that when you provide clarity with regard to your plans for the people, I think you should actually take the day, because you don't model things up. And that's why I said leadership is loud, political offices are loud, and the person who intends to take that office should be loud, provide clarity, and not just mess up the noise. You have to be able to tell people, this is what I want to do. And I think that we should make debates very compulsory. Maybe the reason Nigeria is in this confusion was because the President Muhammadu Buhari didn't tell us what he has for us. And when he got to power, he said, I'm here for nobody and for everybody. And still that has been confusing people. Maybe if he had come and had given clarity, he would have decided whether we'll still vote for him because he understands that or not. So that is also a problem that many people are suffering.
Yeah, but debates are promissory. It's what you intend to do.
No, not just promising. Debate reflects to a good extent what you know about. Even if you are, debate reflects the capacity you have. With every sense of humility, sir, if I was a nuisance here, I won't grace your studio again. You won't touch me with a 10-foot pole because I'll be making a mess of the great work you do here. You labor night and day to make sure you give value. Then you bring in somebody that will mess up your work. No, I won't be here any longer.
But but we also should be careful of charisma. We've seen
Already.
political.
It is not. Last one was.
I mean, look at a
not
gentleman.
not him in particular.
No disrespect to him.
Not
you
him
look
in
at an
particular.
individual like Dino Melaye.
Excuse me.
He's very fluent. You look like
And
as an
charismatic.
individual
Dino
like
Melaye is very
Fani
reckless.
Kayode.
No. Fani Kayode is
Does
smooth
it translate
and
to
suave.
capacity?
No. This is it. Fani Kayode may not have that honor expected of somebody who stays at a place, but he's a very intelligent person. He's a very, very. I have read him. I've watched him. He exudes intelligence. But you know, when you play politics that doesn't make you very, very honorable, that intelligence is taken to the gutters.
So what we're seeing on our screens right now is it seems that the BVAS machine that INEC is using has not recognized the Labour Party candidate. That's a NYSC member, ad hoc staff there, just did his facial recognition. So we're waiting to see if that will work. He initially did the thumbprint first,
And
but
there
apparently
is no
that did
incident
not.
form in this. So if he doesn't capture thumb or face, Lasson goes back home without participating.
And that's
in
one vote gone for him.
Cast. And I don't think that is okay for this election.
Did INEC think it was going to be a foolproof system? I mean, you have the first step, and then the second one
Second
capturing
layer,
the second layer. Because why won't you have incident forms?
Or some
you've
kind of remedial
disenfranchised-
action.
I believe that INEC doesn't want to leave its election to accommodate people who may just want them to use that as a means. They won't be patient enough to let them go through both processes. So INEC is trying to prevent things that are not organized, and that's why INEC has insisted that if people make an attempt and it doesn't work with the thumb, check the face. That is an alternative. If alternative doesn't work, please keep the papers out of it.
But it risks litigation.
Yes, it does. But it does seem that the facial recognition has worked. A number of people are taking pictures of it, and probably that's likely because it's recognized him and brought up
I'm
the
happy
details.
with that. And that is why if you took a picture, bearded as your brother here is, please don't take it off. Because facial recognition can be very funny. It takes into
almost like 25 points on the face?
Yes, all the features. So a situation where, for instance, I didn't have a beard and I just go there with a goatee, it is likely to want to sync it with that of another person. And these things use algorithm. So if it doesn't look at what you were before and what you have become, then I'm sorry, or maybe your hair was black and now it's purple.
You might be disenfranchised as a result of your fashion
consciousness or not. So I think that it's important.
So what do we then do? Because Gbenga has brought up the potential of litigation, because it will disenfranchise people. You can't expect people to go home simply because my thumb or my face may have changed. What if I'm pregnant at that time and I've added 10 kg of weight? What happens if the system rejects me?
Well,
I'm still a valid voter.
Concerns.
I think I'll say that as valid as these concerns are, all over.
I'm so sorry to apologize. I want to point out this secret ballot system we're seeing in front of us again, where people are able to almost be over the shoulder of the voter. Yes, maybe it's because they're so close, because he's the Labour Party candidate, but it does not really lend itself to secrecy, to privacy for those who are voting. What do you think about that?
I think for INEC has to, tell those who produce that cubicle.
Extend it, widen it, lengthen it.
Let it be a little bit higher. In fact, the journalists also are making mistakes in trying to snap the ballot paper. You could just take a picture of the candidate that is about to vote.
From a safe
you don't
distance,
expose the ballot paper. I think that they also need some level of education to not, take some pictures. Because if we're talking about having an election not compromised, then the media should also not do what will make it compromised, even if after INEC had its flaws.
So looking at the two off-cycle elections that happened back-to-back, Ekiti and now Osun State, is there room for INEC to, innovate and improve before the general elections?
Most definitely. I always tell people that at times you don't.
They might not want to rock the boat.
No. This is it.
Let's hear from Yusuf Lasson. He's about to speak now. The Labour Party candidate, third force, and we'll probably talk about that third force conversation right after this. Okay, it looks like we're having some technical issues, but we will speak to Ni Omani immediately afterwards so he can run us through what Lasson Yusuf has said there. But we talked about the balloting. We're at a point now at the third force because, as you said, he performed admirably for you at the debates.
At the poll, yes.
At the polls, and we'll see. And we've been hearing third force. Third force came up again for, particularly for 2019, entry into that on the national level. We're beyond that now, but we keep hearing third force in certain
elections
elections
they thought
now.
the SDP might, be the third force.
I just don't think that people should be talking about third force. If you're a force, you're a force. If you're the third force, you don't matter. Remove the third and just keep a force. You could say a force.
Or just an opposition party. Why must we label it as a third force?
Well, it's a coinage that they are trying to drive into the minds of people. But I refuse to allow it sink in my head because it could cause migraine. Leave thought first out here and talk about the people that believe that they have something of value that the major parties do not have. I think that makes a lot of sense. And oftentimes, if you look at the so-called third force, many of the members of the third force are perhaps those that have tried to take power or work with the opposition parties or work with the leading parties, but they didn't give them room. So oftentimes a force that is not among the leading parties should lend its credence to those that over the time have been disenfranchised, like the citizens of the country really want to also have an impact as far as that ground is concerned. So when you talk about third force, oftentimes the third force are people who were part of the APC, part of the PDP, and every effort made to actually get positions, they don't get it, to get some largesse, they don't get it, so they decide, no, your ideology is essentially the same. The third force should be a group of people, and now not the third force, the force, the real force of change should be a group of people whose ideologies are distinct from those of the leading parties, that lend itself more to the people that do not appreciate the leadership styles and the offerings of the major parties, and that they have been able to appeal so much to the citizens that they are pulling their weight, and the tremors of their weight is being felt by those parties that are there. That is what we call the force. A Kwakwa and Soda was part of the force before NNPC was given birth to. Actually was with the PDP, APC back and forth. A Shekara was also there back and forth. So what is so thought about the force, if not the same ideology being provided for?
It's just a vehicle to get into.
And I don't think that is how you actually do your transportation business, where you want to use a vehicle to take us back to where you were from. The ideologies of a force that intends to take power from the Joe should be something that people have a 10 years.
Something like a Macron in France.
Well, Macron is a product of the French institution, the political institution itself. Macron is a product of that. Yeah. And even if we know that Macron at least has been able to come to power, he's done what has not been done by his predecessors by being a political party that succeeds itself. That is something he has done, but he's a product of the institution. So Le Pen, you talk about Le Pen, for instance. Le Pen, obviously, we know.
Right wing.
Yes, right wing. But at the same time, she has her own ideals.
And the products of her father.
Well, most definitely. And the father happens to be a product of the institution again.
So politicians don't exist in a vacuum.
There is
Everybody is a product of
this
something.
This is it, Benga. The vacuum doesn't exist because the people have always been there. And your alliance should be built over time. This is what I'm trying to picture. Any force that intends to take power from the so-called first and second political parties must have a 10-year plan.
And patience is key.
Patient strategy, funds. This patient strategy funds, PSF. These three things are key. Because you have to understand that in the first place, and what do? You have to leverage the grassroots where they will actually provide food soldiers for yourself. So you have a constituency that has
structures. Nigerian political lexicon.
Don't bring in the Peter Obi lack of structure.
No, we're not going there. But you know, this thing you're saying now, so would you then say that those who are considering themselves to be third force, where the other opposition parties are actually serious about being concrete opposition?
This is it. The third force we are hearing now started about a year ago. You don't have a third force. They were there in 2019. And when the elections are like a year, the third force emerged. They say they are meeting and all of that. No. You don't become a force that wants to.
When you talk about that 2019 third force, are you talking about the merger, the executive?
No, that's not even. Well, don't forget, a Patutomi has always been part of the force. Some other people from the Niger Delta have always been part of the force. Then you have the Niger Delta Middle Belt Forum. You have men. You have all these groups, splinters here, becoming a part of the force. But that's not it. The people that are in power are there now. As a force that wants to unseat them, you sit down. We are here for the long time. You don't wrest power from bulwarks overnight. That simply means you have to create your... Don't forget, the force that wants to unseat them must appeal to the people. That's why I'm saying that you talked about not existing in a vacuum. There has never been a vacuum if you leverage the material of the people that actually vote for you. So what do? You have a 10-year plan. The first 3-4 years, you want to take powers at the respective local councils. So, for instance, now, when the election of 2023 comes, you start your work as a force. So the first 2 years, you continue to create orientation, you continue to appeal to the people. First 2 years, when INEC opens the room for you to take, what is it called, to get from, then you go into, yes.
Okay,
Are you stopping me again?
At least it's not me this time.
We'll have to get to the other Adeni in Ilogbo, Osun State,
Yes,
give us
please.
update on what just happened. The Labour Party candidate, Yusuf Lasun, just voted in his polling unit. Hello, Nee. Hello, Nee. Can you please bring us up to speed with what just happened in your location?
Okay, we may be having some technical difficulties with Nee. We can see him and we think he can hear us, but I'm not sure about that. But we'll come back to Nee.
We see his mouth moving, but we can't.
We can't hear what he's saying. But we'll come back to him because we definitely want to know what the Labour Party candidate said. So I can apologize for Benga for interrupting you this time, not me now.
Okay.
So we're back to this third force thing, and you've laid out that there must be a 10-year plan.
Let me give you a picture.
Okay, Nee, sorry for interrupting you. I would apologize now. Nee is back.
It's all right.
You hear me now?
All right, Nee, tell us what the Labour Party candidate Yusuf Lasun said after voting today.
Very
It still seems to have
The
some technical
struggle
issues.
is real. Okay, Nee, can you try that again? We really did not catch you. We can see that you're speaking to us, but we can't hear you. Or maybe also, if it's possible, this is the day of technology, quickly send us a WhatsApp message. Let us know the points and we can take it from there. So let's come back to this third force.
Yes, please. 10-year plan is what I was talking about.
10-year plan to assume power.
10-year plan to actually begin. Don't forget, for us to have a lasting change and the government we need a 30-year map to do that. The force that is not aligning with the leading political parties can be responsible for that, because it's always difficult for you to have as part of you those people that have raped this country's soul. So what do you do?
But the problems need to be attended to urgently.
No, you can't have an urgent solution to such deep-rooted problems, because for you to do that, you're going to go back the same way. So what do? I talked about funds. I talked about being able to appeal to people, and I talked about strategy. So when you have 10 years, the first thing you do, for the first 2 years, do not seek to take power. Do not seek to actually unseat people. Seek to buy into the minds of people. Don't forget, we have distrust, mistrust that you are dealing with. We have disenchantment. We have hatred. We have disappointment. You have poverty. So what do? The first thing to do is to create room and ideas that will let people, first of all, see you, more or less like a man who has been heartbroken many times and has decided that the reason I always use human beings as my case study is because this is about human beings. And people can relate easily to that. A man who has had his heart broken several times may feel that I'm not just going to have any committed relationship anymore. Anyone that comes along, have a nice time and I stay on my own. I don't want to be heartbroken.
Don't want to eat breakfast.
Yes.
Last.
Come on.
Last.
So now what do? The first thing you have to do is to allow your healing process start from the inside, not just a surface solution. For any force that wants to take power, you must begin with the people, the closest to you. Lagos, for instance, has 20 local government, 37 local council development areas. In every of the local governments, create centers of political orientation, sensitization, and education. Centers of political orientation, sensitization, and education. Centers of political orientation, sensitization, and of course, education. When you create this, you now have people that are soundly educated. You must include political scientists, economic experts, educators, business people. You must include them as core. And what do? At every point in time, they hold free sessions. And you must have an office that has a hall that accommodates at least 500 people. 500 people. Now,
I mean, it sounds like a full-time job.
It is a full-time job.
Daily realities.
It sounds like an investment.
The women we love, we invest our time, we invest our resources. Anything that is what do you invest something? Nothing comes free. For me to come here, I had to wake up, tidy up my researches, get my clothes properly ironed. I've invested in being able to appeal to the people that are ready and tidy up my research. I can't afford to be a nuisance in your studio because it is expected. That is my own contribution to this great platform that you have afforded me the opportunity to come to, because I can't mess it up. This is what I'm saying. Everything in life, you have your own contribution to it. That is how the world is formed. You don't have anything grow as food if you don't put your seed in the soil.
So let me throw a monkey wrench into this, and this is my monkey wrench.
I have an oil to make sure the wrench doesn't spoil my wheel.
So my monkey wrench is this. If we look at the past 2 election cycles, federal election cycles, and the creation of the APC, it's very rare right now to see a lot of politicians stay in one political party for even that 10 years. That's one. Then in this 10-year process, are we looking at this force as separate but united opposition parties, or we're looking at this force to be one party that uses 10 to 15 years to work towards power?
We're talking about...
Can you even call it a party or pressure group?
This is it. This is it. The people in question would have to still come from some political parties.
Yes. Will they stay long enough before jumping
back? And then
back?
at the end of the 10 years, when you see Israel, you now have all those guys jumping in.
You've talked about Israel. A friend was visiting Israel, that was some years ago, and the tour guide took them to some areas where they have buildings unoccupied. And the question was asked, why do you have these buildings? Said they are for the generations that will have to occupy it because we make provisions for those who will be needing homes. People must understand that you do not correct any error without investing time. This quick remedy approach, especially for a deep-rooted problem in this country, cannot be solved overnight. I said 30-year plan. I've not even talked about the first 10 years. Some people that will correct the problem in this country
have not been born.
They have been born. Some of them, perhaps they just got their pregnancies confirmed today. They will come to see the things you build upon that they cannot change. Let me tell you, 3-4 generations have been members of the Conservatives or Labour Party, have been Republicans and Democrats in the US and the UK respectively. They can disagree. Don't forget, for instance, the party in government now in the UK, they've disagreed with Boris Johnson. They've not jumped the party. They're still in the party.
But they said your ideals don't match with the party, so you have to leave.
Just look at the gale of resignations. I'm saying that people can remain in a party And that is why it's not a proper reflection of political ideology. That means the people believe in what the party stands for.
Come back to this your utopian dream.
It is not utopian. It's a dream
We'll get back to it. And I'm like Tolu said, I'm going to throw some monkey wrenches as well. So let's hear the interview with the Labour Party candidate, Mr. Yusuf Larson.
I've not been hearing any villa. And when I leave this place now, I'm going back home to go and start watching television channels to see what is actually going on. I've not been listening to anything, and I've not been picking calls.
So for now, you can't make any comment?
No, I can't.
On security?
No, I can't make any comment. Because this is my polling unit, and in the last almost 40 years, or 44 years that I've been voting, this polling unit has always been very heavy. I've been voting since 1979 when I left secondary school, and this has been consistently my polling unit. And of course, this is my family compound. And this polling unit, we are always orderly, and people always come out en masse to vote, and they have done so today. And I'm not going to start commenting on the election that is still going on. We are just like 1.5 hours in the election, so I can't comment on the election that has just started. The only thing I know for now is that I've just cast my vote. It took me about 10 minutes to do so, and I hope in the course of the election that process is going to be improved upon.
Any fear of the monster vote buy?
We all know that. And Nigerians in their streets, if we continue to buy votes, anyway, my own generation is about exiting politics. I just have fear for the future generation. But let me sound a note of warning. If people actually go out today to buy the votes, Nigeria is in problem.
So I took away two things that the candidate there said. He said that the polling unit is in his family compound. I know there have been a number of issues with the location of polling units in some recent times. Some very famously on the floor of the National Assembly saying that because he's had how many children now, that he should also have a polling unit. And then he says, my generation is about exiting politics and I fear for the future generations. And that makes me wonder, if you know your generation is about exiting politics, why still put yourself forward? Why not support a younger, fresher candidate that has a longer lifespan ahead of them?
The president actually thought that his generation had actually exited politics until the Lagos army went to help him and he became the president of the country. He's only been realistic when he said that his generation is exiting politics. Yusuf Larson is in his 60s.
61.
And because he's in his 60s, he has to be real. If he got the mandate of his people, he serves over 2 terms. At 70, he should be able to retire and reflect. And he knows that if he doesn't have the opportunity to get it now, maybe he's going to have one more shot at it. I never can tell. If he doesn't have it, then he may leave and just go home and begin to see how we can nurture people. But I think that that's a realistic statement for him to have actually said that his generation will be retiring. But he said again that if anybody he doesn't let this election process go the way it goes, that he's afraid and worried for the future of the country. And that is another statement of fact. So he has said it rightly. I like his composure. I like his attitude. I have not met him personally. I've only read up on the things that he has done and some of the things he intends to do. But I believe that the people of Osun State will be the ones to eventually determine who will indeed win this election. But I also want them to know that those who occupy offices are their servants. You see, there is a dangerous thing that has happened to our politics now, where people believe that the person who occupies an office is your demigod and superior to you.
Maybe it's the honorifics, your excellency. And,
No, this is it. Every office. Now, let me tell you why we have that. When you seek election and people see you as fit to represent them, it's an honorable thing to do. And that is why they accord you by calling you your excellency, because a lot of people believe that you have that mental wherewithal to represent them and help them interpret their dreams. And it's an honorable thing to do. And that is why we have accorded them the respect of their officers. But you see, people have switched that to want to make the people that put them into office begin to think that they are inferior. And that is why every platform that I have the opportunity, I try to use those platforms to educate people. The president, number one now, is my own servant, President Muhammadu Buhari. And at times when he misbehaves, I caution him because that is what we should do. But a situation where people don't believe, it is when you use derogatory words that is wrong. But you should be able to caution your president because he's serving you. You should be able to caution your lawmaker because he is serving you. That is what it is. But as I want to say again, the weaponization of poverty, the lack of education, the limitless or the limiting of opportunities, this is the tripod of enemies that has kept people thinking. And at the same time, yes.
And I also think the attractiveness of the office. We saw resignation.
Quite frankly, it's a quartet of problems now. Thank you. You've added that. The office
if it
has
was
been
a
made
do or die affair, you would never see that, even if it's
and that is why we
Yes.
have to identify the people that occupy the office called the Salaries and Wages Commission, and how every time they have improved the earnings and allowances of people that are going to be in office just for a brief period, as against what the majority of the population get. And that is very important to look at as well.